Episode 296 of the TV Dudes, recorded August 19th, 2020. Wrong place, wrong time. So this week, we've got stories of people who are out of their place, often to their peril. Whether it's the protagonist facing the horrors of racism and elder gods on Lovecraft Country on HBO Max, the odd cast of characters in Dark Side of the Ring on Hulu, the titular teenage bounty hunters on Netflix, the scrappy ensigns of Star Trek Lower Decks on CBS All-Access, or the scrappy and lovable coach on the wrong side of the pond on Apple Plus's Ted Lasso, we're talking about a lot of characters on the wrong side of their comfort zones. But before we get to all that, I'm Randy.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Les.
And we are the TV Dudes. Guys, this is usually the point where we do a little intro chat and then go right into the power rankings. We're skipping the power rankings this week.
No power rankings?
No power.
So that we can get you some extra shows this week. So we got a lot of shows to talk about.
Yeah.
And
we're going to have a huge power rankings next week because, I think most of these are brand new to the list.
Yeah. Brand new. In fact, brand new shows. There was a lot of new shows this week. And for the most part, I got to say, a pretty good week for TV. I was pretty happy with a lot of these.
Particularly because these were shows, a couple of these we were given an extra episode to see how they really pan. And they almost all of them upticked for me.
Yeah.
Or I liked them better than I thought I was going to.
We want to start with a reminder that you can support us by going over to patreon.com/tvdudes. Throw us a buck an episode, and in exchange for that, you get to keep up. You get to keep up with our bonus content that we do. So each week we will do a 30 to 45 minute rundown. Last week we talked about the genius of Keanu Reeves and the less than genius of Keanu Reeves as well. To lead into our Bill and Ted series. So this week we're going to be talking Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure on the Patreon exclusive episode. And you can also, that helps us keep up our streaming. We really appreciate it. There is also the showrunner level. If you want to throw us $20, you can pick 2 shows that go into our rotation. Now, that seems to be exclusively anime at this point. And in fact, Mandy Kokot, who had us watch Kill la Kill, has picked her next anime show, and that is Carol and Tuesday, which I am ahead of my homework for next week. I've watched the 2/3 of it, and I gotta say I'm kind of digging it, which is going to make Mandy happy. And more than that, I think Les is going to like it, which is going to make Mandy very happy, because I think she was actually a little disturbed. She thought she might have damaged Les a little bit with Kill la Kill.
I like Kill la Kill, though.
Of course, if I like it, if we all three like one, it'll unseal the sign of the apocalypse.
That's when the planet just starts breaking apart.
It's
the
like
core
the end
oozes out of,
Yeah, and that'd be terrible. We don't want anything bad to happen to the year 2020.
You know what it would be? It would be an Umbrella Academy season finale if that happened.
Yes.
If we all agreed on an anime.
Unfortunately, also, 5 is who's going back to help us.
But also, we have a Patreon, Tyler Thorson, who has been patiently waiting. And this week, we were getting his request. We are going to talk Dark Side of the Ring over on Hulu, which is a Vice joint. It is their documentary series. 6 episodes about the sort of true horrible stories of the people of worldwide wrestling and WCW and WWF and WWE.
Well, can I give you kind of a quick backstory to how televised wrestling came about?
Yes, please, go ahead.
The Federation and WWF. So essentially, there was wrestling all over the country, all over Canada, all over Mexico, and what you would get is 2 or 3 states would have their own wrestling confederation. So Mid-South Wrestling was the Memphis, Tennessee area, and they would throw huge shows where everybody from the Mid-South would come to see the headline guys. So what was it, Jerry Lawler was kind of from that federation.
Yeah, I know that name.
Yeah, no, he got his ass whooped by Andy Kaufman, right?
William Shatner. I don't know if you are familiar with that. But no, essentially each one of these areas had one or two big guys, and Vince McMahon was the person to go around to every area, poach their best wrestler, and start his own worldwide wrestling federation, which was essentially just ripping off all of... So there is tons of great stories out there, kind of like Criminal Podcast, of all of those wrestlers who got screwed over kind of in the wake of this one man's, ambition.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's essentially how we get to televised wrestling today. There was a big rivalry between WWF and WCW in the 90s.
And that was a pissing match with Ted Turner, right? I think so, but I also I know for a lot of the wrestlers, and they actually talk about this in these first 6 episodes we've seen in season 1. But for a lot of them, if they weren't getting the deal they wanted in the WWF, so like a lot of the older wrestlers, Macho Man, Hulk Hogan, they weren't getting the same thing they were getting originally. WCW offered them great deals. And then they took all their viewers with them over there, and it was almost like a second renaissance for televised wrestling. Yeah, that's the linchpin of the Bret Hart episode, if I remember right.
So I feel like I don't want to... I think Les and I always hold ourselves to only a few minutes of bagging on anime when we talk about anime. I'm going to hold myself to only a few minutes of bagging on wrestling. But this confirmed for me that I do not give a fuck about wrestling. There is such a weird crossover, especially in like kids who grew up in the 80s, who read comics. Like, so many of my friends are so into wrestling, and I've tried. I just cannot plug into it. It is so alien to me. It is not entertaining. Maybe it's because I'm not a sports guy at all. It's like the performance aspect of it doesn't do anything for me. Nothing.
Did you like the show Glow?
Yeah, Glow is the closest I've come to liking wrestling.
Yeah, same.
So in the show, they kind of explain how it's all about the story. Like, there's this one wrestler who, Machu Picchu, I think is the character's name. So, like, she shows her brothers and how, like, everybody's invested in this one, certain thing. If you never get in and get invested in one of those stories and suspend disbelief, because you know it's fake, but then something catches your attention where you're like, oh, that's kind of fun, and you're just like, screw it, I just want to see what happens next. If you've never had that jump-in point, it looks so ridiculous. I don't know how anybody could take it seriously.
And that's kind of my... I did the same as you, Randy. Like, this show confirmed that, like, this wrestling doesn't click for me. I see what they're going for, and it's like me not liking a particular comic or something. Yeah. It's kind of how it feels. Like, I get that the storylines are happening and stuff. I don't buy these actors doing it.
Yeah.
And there's something for me in the gray area of knowing it's a performance that somehow just doesn't quite. I don't know why it doesn't quite work for me, but it doesn't quite. I never fully invest, so I never quite feel the emotion of the thing. And where Dark Side of the Ring actually appealed for me on a couple of episodes, like I liked a couple of the episodes a lot more than others, is where it got into that weirdness of these being characters, particularly because, like Kyle was saying, like, there's these early stories. I know some of the years that I know. I mean, like, I know some of the Andre the Giant Hulk Hogan stories. I know some of the later shit Hulk Hogan stories about him. If I remember right, he's the main reason that they didn't get to unionize and fucked a bunch of people over. And then Hulk is later just kind of a dick. And so I knew some of those stories, but these early ones where you get into, like, these guys having real problems in an era without internet of being seen as their character or not in their character and trying to balance their private lives and stuff. Those were actually appealing to me. The episodes where you just watch a meathead that you know has a drug problem and is definitely an abusive bastard, and he dies from it, and it's like, oh, I'm sorry we're telling his mom on camera. That's fucked up on the part of the filmmakers.
Yeah.
But this is not a story worthy of 30 minutes. All of the episodes feel a bit 10 minutes long. Longer than they ought to be.
Were they 30 minutes? Because these all felt really long to me.
I want to say they're 30 minutes, but they felt like a year.
Yeah.
They all felt a hair long, and I feel like they're in a format of a show I don't watch. Like, they're an unsolved mystery, true crime-ish story I don't watch.
45 minutes.
Okay, so they're 15 minutes too long.
Actually, yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I totally got that too. No, I think so I think I obviously liked it the most out of the group. I also had this connection with wrestling kind of in the early days of WCW. on through till about like maybe 2000, 2002. Just long enough to see like every major actor now who was once a wrestler was a wrestler when I watch wrestling.
So you could smell what The Rock was cooking.
Yeah. They're just now starting to age out. Like the Batista and the John Cena, that was like right when I quit watching wrestling. But anyways, the episodes that I loved were one, the killing of Bruiser Brody.
That's the best episode I watched.
Oh, shit.
That was fucked up and great. Yeah.
It's just insane because you find out there's tons of money in international markets for wrestling, and a lot of these big name wrestlers in the 70s and 80s were trying to break into those markets. And where was he, in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, he was in Puerto Rico. He had that story actually came together. I don't know that the Vice folks putting it together did a great job of making all the dots really stand out, but by the end of that 45 minutes, I was like, guys, this is a clear-cut, like, Elmore Leonard pulp novel about the biggest sumbitch I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And
so that's
and
I'd like to go back a little bit. I think you kind of nailed it for me. Like, I'm not against true crime. I actually thought I might enjoy this despite my lack of interest in the wrestling world because, the notion of, like, weird, fucked up Elmore Leonard style crime and odd characters and all that kind of stuff. The
problem is most of these aren't that.
People getting murdered, people having drunk, like all this should be interesting, but it's presented so straight faced and with such a dun dun. This is serious journalism that I think that it loses what should be fun about it. And I get that it's real people and real crime, but I think wrestling is spectacle and fun. And sort of the entertaining. You want this to be entertainment as much as a documentary, and I feel like it flops on both scores. Like, I wasn't super entertained, and I also wasn't able to track all the they didn't do a great job of showing me the characters. Look at something like McMillions, where I'm like, every one of those characters. Like, yes, I felt terribly sad for those characters, but I also laughed at times.
Yeah, someone should do a Brody murder series. Like, there should be a documentary just of trying to figure that out.
See, I don't want a documentary.
That was very Tiger King.
Or just one episode on that. Yeah, there should be a movie of that. Like Jason Momoa could easily do this and be that dude. Because that story was cool. Like, watching Macho Man, like, where literally everybody that talks about him, every one of his friends, they do any quotes in the voice, brother.
Yeah.
And you realize that they're not doing that necessarily to be fun. He never broke.
Yeah.
He was that dude. And so, like, the true crime revelation was his delusional friends of 40 years finally kind of admitting that, like, oh, Randy was a complete bastard. And like was definitely scaring the shit out of his wife, and like this whole thing on camera is super awkward and weird. But like the Brody one, that dude, that story as it unfolds, he's the first one on camera where it really hit me that how smart this dude was, and how like nice and eloquent on camera. Like, none of the rest of them, even when they were off camera and the character separation stuff, it didn't really click for me, like the break between, except for him, where he said something about like with my kids or something like that, and then he stopped and like, we're recording, I said something earnest, I don't think that's gonna can we, like, but he didn't get it, it really, the one little moment they showed of him where he didn't know he was on camera or didn't know they were rolling was really telling. And the wife talking about him changing character, walking away from the car and shaking his hair out and becoming this dude.
They touched on this in I think every episode. The whole fact that a lot of these guys had to keep this going at least till they got to their house.
Yeah,
including a guy who had Nair thrown in his eyes and then wore bandages around like he was, essentially making himself blind for like the weeks leading up to his Gino's
match partner, where Chris whatever.
Yeah, gets his sight back and wins the wrestling match.
You can't. Hulk Hogan and Savage's bullshit about Elizabeth is just weird, and like it where they're like, no, Randy really is a paranoid schizophrenic, Like, I'm not sure that he's not genuinely this paranoid of a bastard. Like, I can't figure out where he knows the shtick is ending. And with the Brody thing, when he gets stabbed, like even when Abdullah, the other guy, hears about it, he thinks that they're just getting the bit rolling.
Yeah, they're doing a bit. Yeah, that was one of the things I found interesting and also frustrating about this is that I can't tell who's in character and who's not. I can't tell who's still going along with the bit, and to me, that's not fun. I understand that if you're a wrestling fan, that's fun. You're like, oh, this is cool, and it's the blending of reality and fiction. Like, some of those moves are real, some of them aren't. We don't know who's going to win the match, but we do. And I'm like, no.
He was fucking stabbed with that fork for real, but then this other part's not real.
Yeah, one way or the other. That's the thing. And maybe I'm simple here, but I'm like, give me fiction and give me reality, but don't blend the two. That does not appeal to me.
And so that's part of why like actual wrestling doesn't quite work for me, but it's why I thought the show would. And I feel like if Vice had assembled it a little bit, if the McMillions folks had been behind this, and I really thought Vice could do it. Yeah. I think if these were assembled a little tighter and a little less History Channel or Ancient Alien, if it didn't feel a little like Ancient Aliens or Unsolved Wrestling Mysteries, then I think...
Well, it's funny you say that, because the one thing I wanted to comment on this whole time is something I think they excelled at, and that is they do the Unsolved Mysteries, reenactments of different things.
Yeah, those actually work pretty well.
They have a very unique art style to them. You literally feel like you're on the dark side of the ring because everybody is shot in dramatic light. You can only see their shadows.
It's all blurred just enough.
Yeah, like the body casting they got from Macho Man Randy Savage.
They just get the right shape, dude.
That was him.
I was like, where did y'all get footage of Randy Savage just flipping out, throwing chairs? And like, that is just like a roughly Savage-shaped dude.
There's also, I will say, there was one character in all of these episodes, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he's the dude who had like the molester glasses on. And essentially, he was the wrestling fan who was also a writer/producer for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And he's the one who always comes in and goes, that person's full of shit. I know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And after a while, I'm like, you are the type of person who needs to be writing wrestling. Like, you could literally do nothing else.
But think about this. Yeah.
Yeah. Even when he's like, having a hypothetical argument with his old partner, he sounds like a wrestler who's like, when I get you in the ring, brother, I'm going to show you how to write a script. I'm going to show you what a twist is.
And then, God, his writing partner was the guy that was like, everything's been done before. You should go back to 1913 when this twist happened. And, I think that was in the Bret Hart episode. Yeah, at its best, wrestling can be like... This is going to sound like a dig, and it's not. At its best, wrestling for me can be like arguing about X-Men in a roller rink in 1988.
No, that is where I think I wish it was for me, and it is just not.
But it just doesn't work for that's the problem. Like I want it to be like that, and comics and movies and stuff connect for me in a way that wrestling just has never quite clicked. I will say flat out I want to see a fictionalized movie of the Brody story. That thing's fucking crazy, and I don't think Vice got it across in 45 minutes.
Yeah, I agree.
Just how
I think
he had clearly bought into, like he was investing in the Puerto Rican territory wrestling thing and was going to be a minority stake owner, and they owed him about $25,000 apparently. And it's also one of the only ones where I felt like another wrestling character in there was utterly earnest and a good friend. Atlas, the big bodybuilder that worked out with Brody all the time, the bodybuilder turned wrestler. Yeah, he's the one that like literally like lifted the dude because the two doctors that showed up couldn't pick Brody up to put him into the ambulance. And then when he got to the hospital and the doctor was like, whatever, it's a stab victim. I mean, there's a lot of stab. It's a hospital. Like, I'll get to your friend when I get to your friend. And he's like, I reached around the guy's waist, picked him up over my shoulder, and carried him into the room and set the doctor down. And they finally made him leave because everybody in the room was too scared of him to do anything. But like, that episode was great. I think season 2 of this just dropped, but the format is, I want it 15 minutes shorter. Every one of them feels like it drags a hair. There's a moment where I'm like, You're acting like we've got another 15 minutes to twist, and we don't. I know we don't.
Yeah, I agree. I think cutting it down to 30 minutes and having a little bit more fun with it. Yeah, I get this is serious stuff, but man, it's wrestling. You got to give me a little more entertaining than here.
What I would rather have? Drunk wrestling history.
Oh God, yes. Drunk wrestling is going to be amazing.
Between Randy, between the three of us, I know we know enough people that could either that could get very inebriated in their manner of choice and tell me the story of the Montreal Screwjob in a better way than this.
Oh yeah, I could definitely see that. All right, so I hope that us ripping on mostly talking about how we did not like it was satisfactory for you, Tyler. We did. I think we gave it a fair shot. Well, I did watch all 6 of these, so thank you. And I don't know if you have a second pick, but be thinking about that. And if your second pick
I think you jinxed yourself, Randy, because now that he knows you don't like it, why would he not do season 2 as his second pick?
I was going to say, don't. If you do season 2, I'm not watching all of it. I'll tell you right now.
I'm trying to. I went to a movie marathon night. It's just a few years, a couple of 3 years ago. Oh God, longer than that. Fuck, I'm old. That was literally like The Wrestler was one of the movies, obviously. Then there was some crazy shit like Wrestle Madness, which is about a wrestling dog. There was a whole string of movies, and like I remember then thinking, same with The Wrestler, the movie with Mickey Rourke, that there is a dark side to this and a weirdness to this theatricality and athleticism and weird space it creates that is appealing to me. I just I don't know. If somebody were to point by point recommend me season 2 episodes of Dark Side of the Ring, I might watch them.
I've actually already gotten one. It's either 2 or 3. I'm going to double check, but yeah, apparently my brother's favorite of all of these is in season 2. So I'm going to at least check that out, regardless of.
Let me know what that one is, and I will probably watch that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is time for new business, and I realize, guys, we have 5 shows on 5 different networks this week.
Dum dum dum.
Wow.
So let's dive in first to a show that I did not expect to like as much as I did. I fell in love with it. I watched all of it. You guys are about halfway through, so we're going to only cover the first half. We might come back for more either next week or the week after. And that show is Teenage Bounty Hunters on Netflix. So this show is Jenji Cohen is one of the producers from Orange is the New Black and Weeds. And when you hear that, you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense.
Her name's pretty buried on it. Like I was thinking by her name being trumpeted as one of the producers that it was more involved in the creation, but it's not her show.
No, she wrote one episode. It was the episode that was directed by Stephen Falk from You're the Worst. But the creator is a woman named Kathleen Jordan, who her credits are pretty slim. I'm kind of surprised. She wrote a show called American. She wrote an episode of American Princess, and she wrote on a TV series called Threesome, and that's it. Like, she was a producer on a few things, but like she does not have. She was a casting director. Like, she does not have what you kind of the kind of a resume of someone who's like, Netflix is like, hey, here's a show, but. She did a great job with it, I think. And it does have a Jenji Cohen feel in that it is. It's a comedy. It's more comedy than dramedy, but it definitely has its dramedy moments, I think.
There's times, sometimes with shows you feel like this is a format I know. This is an older format that I feel at home or familiar with, but updated into this faster, modern binge, drop them all at once model. I feel like by Netflix dropping all of these at once, I almost didn't notice that this is kind of a USA show.
It kind of is, yeah.
With a lot more swimming. Like there's a bounty hunter case of the week. They felt like it has like a burn notice silliness a little bit at times, but with all the swearing and the crazy connectivity of binge
a little more
that
serialized.
Netflix can do. And I was like, you know what, the Netflix of this is almost masking that this is a style of show I dig.
Another thing, just kind of like a technical or like a style thing that they do, is I find that like in a lot of instances where like there'd be a really cliche moment, like they circumvent cliches often.
They do.
Like especially when you have like teenagers and cell phones, and it's like, oh, I got to picture you. Like, I feel like there's a million things we've seen in all these other stories that take place in a high school on Netflix.
Yeah.
But this one was just really clever in just how it delivered story, and it never took like the easy turn.
So
in the first
quick
episode,
premise, just because I don't know if a lot of people watch this yet.
I mean, it is right there in the title, but I was probably describe it.
Yeah, so this is basically Sterling and Blair Wesley, a pair of teenage girl twins. After a night with their boyfriends, they get in a car accident with someone who turns out to be a skip running from a bounty hunter, and they wind up assisting the bounty hunter, played by Kadeem Hardison.
Dwayne Wayne.
Bowser Jenkins in this, which is great.
That's a great.
They assist him, and they kind of BS their way into like, no, we're bounty hunters, because they need some of the money to fix their dad's truck that they were driving and they weren't supposed to be. And from that point, they become basically bounty hunter interns for him. And the flip side of the story, and aside from the bounty hunter case of the week stuff, is that they are like good Christian girls, good Republican Christian girls in this Christian private school, and Sterling
is just rich douchebags.
Yeah,
so it's part Saved.
Yeah, I was going to say Saved is one of the references I would make. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good reference.
And so Sterling is like, she's up for being the head of the Christian Fellowship. This is all set in Atlanta, Georgia. It's very southern. It's very southern Christian, but it reads like if you my sisters-in-law from Dallas. Like, I swear to God, if you told me this was their life, but with bounty hunting, I'd believe it. Like it's so of a piece with like Rich Dallas too.
There's a lot of the particular... so the writing on this is just sharp.
Yeah.
You would text... I was partway through the first episode when you texted me that one of these is directed by Stephen Falk, and it wasn't the one I was on. But the show opens with both an awkward sex scene, and I did have a moment of like, I just tore into anime for constantly presenting me high school sex. But it doesn't power up their shotguns. It is like an awkward... competition moment that felt very true of like the one sister that loves her slut reputation, but hasn't actually had sex, and then the goody two shoes sister who at the jump of the show loses her virginity. I don't feel bad spoiling that. Is the opening scene. It is the inciting.
I was watching it. I didn't know the premise for sure. I thought maybe it was a fake out, that like the guy was a mark and that she wasn't.
I was really wondering how we were going to get into them being bounty hunters, or if we were going to start with them already. And I feel like it rolls very naturally into them.
It does.
Actually, that's the first cliche they circumvented. A lot other shows would just throw you right in. They're already bounty hunters. You get that in flashback or whatever, and it was super organic.
I like that it doesn't take long for Bowser to point out that like, you can't take the skip in. You have no bounty hunter license. You can't get one. Fuck you.
I also love that Bowser catches on. They don't punk him out. He catches on really quick. He's like, you guys aren't bounty hunters.
Yeah.
Like, he catches on really quickly.
Their twinning, like twin speak moments are great.
I love the twin speak.
Yes. Oh, the best one is when they're doing a brunch with their grandfather, and he says something about Trump, and they go into twin speak, which is like
don't say it, don't do it. I got it.
Conversation.
Yeah.
And she goes, "I'm sorry, I can't stop myself. I'm saying it right now." And she just is like,
yeah, the twin
I feel like the equality.
The twin speak is probably one of the big innovations of this show. It is a clever bit.
I was going to say about the writing and the Christianity, there are some lines that are... What reminded me of Saved was the sharpness of the like weaponized religion. There was a moment where they're debating whether or not to go follow up and get this skip who has beat up a prostitute.
Yeah.
And it's not that there's particularly anything in it for the just the way one... I can't remember if it's Sterling or Blair, but the way that one of them describes it is, I don't feel right as a Christian letting him walk around out there not judged.
Yeah.
Like, not bringing, not any, like, I don't feel like it's right, you know, he needs to face justice or anything.
Yeah.
Like, I want him publicly shamed.
Yeah. I think they did a good job of balancing the girls being smart but also sort of teenage naive. Like,
yes.
they buy completely when they spot the guy who's their friend's dad, not their friend's dad, their sort of frenemy's dad. When they spot him in the club and he's telling his friends a bullshit lie about how, no, I didn't beat up that hooker, that was my friend, I'm just covering for him. And they buy right into it, and they go to Bowser and be, no, he's innocent. And Bowser's like, no, what? What are you talking about?
And like literally turns his phone and like, here's the security footage of your boy.
Yeah.
And then they go immediately pistol whip the fuck out of him.
Yeah, I love that. There is something, especially in 2020, very satisfying about watching a couple of teenage girls beat up a rich white douchebag who thinks he can get away with anything.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I guess we got to compare it to Hard Candy then, the Ellen Page movie.
Oh, man, yes.
Which is awesome if you haven't seen it.
Yes, if you've not seen Hard Candy, that's worth it.
So I want to talk about the sisters in particular, played by, what is it? Maddie Phillips and Angelica Betfellini. Now, I was watching this, and when they always cast teenage girls, they always cast like 20-somethings as teenage girls. And I'm like, I hope, because they definitely, there's Angelica Fellini is like super cute, and I'm like, I kind of have a little crush on this girl, but I feel like that's not appropriate. But she's probably 20-something. No, she is fucking 15 years old. But her sister is 26.
Whoa!
And I could had you told me that, I would have guessed the other way around. I would have guessed that Blair was the older one because she comes across the more worldly one. But yeah, Blair is the actress is 15 and Maddie is 26. So they managed to pull it off where the casting on this is by Jennifer Houston, who's done a lot of Glow and Orange is the New Black. And the casting of the sisters is so crucial and so perfect because they read like sisters. I see some things on IMDb where people are like, are they really twins in real life? And I'm like, they're not twins, guys, but I can see where you would think it. Yeah, it's great casting.
And they're not, if you haven't seen the show, they're fraternal twins. They're not identical.
They're not identical.
Twins.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's not like they casted people who look together. They just are so in sync with their performances, you would totally buy their sisters.
Yeah.
And that they're the same age, which 26, that's insane.
I also want to say,
I have seen her Maddie on something before. She was on The Gifted. She's Twist.
I also wanted to call out one other thing I think is interesting. A show set in Atlanta, Georgia, about white Christian teenage girls could easily have been a little cringy. I think they did a good job. But first of all, they make the religion stuff sincere, even when they're making fun of it. Like their camp counselor or whatever, she's a likable character, even if she's a little hokey. And also, there's really good representation of color here. Not just Kadeem Hardison, who Bowser's fantastic, but her boyfriend Miles, the way he sort of starts off as one thing, turns into another, calls her on her bullshit of like, yeah, you didn't want to go out with me, and you were going to tank this date, and then you found out I was hot, like the way that played out is really good.
When she brings up the statue conversation at the party. And absolutely splits the room. And like they do that frequently where they'll have one of them just put their foot in their mouth, revealing privilege or whatever.
Yes.
And either Kadeem Harrison or like Bowser's character or one of the other characters will look at them like with just a withering like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and that they do that, and they manage to make them both believably naive, privileged teenagers, and yet likable at all times. Like, there's never a point where I'm like, oh god, I can't stand these girls.
Yeah, even the moment where I think early on, Bowser's like, why would I possibly want to drag you two high school students along with me on a freaking bounty thing? They're like, because the guy is hiding out in a country club, and you can't go in. Or even when they're talking about fake news, and I'm like, oh, these are Trump-supporting kids. Like, oh, God, yeah. There's a couple of times where, like, you realize, oh, yeah, y'all are sheltered dipshits. You just can run fast and have no qualms about tackling a motherfucker. And one of you is a scary good shot.
You know what's funny is it's that whole Trump-supporting thing that kind of got them their first bounty, because the reason they were able to get that first person was because in their dad's truck, he just had a shotgun in there.
Right.
So they were able to pull the shotgun out.
They check off, like, drop that with we stole the hunting truck.
Yeah.
Like, I've never driven the hunting truck.
Well, and that's why she's a scary good shot. They go to the gun range later in the show. Like, they have been shooting all their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about Mackenzie Aston, who plays the dad?
Yes, Sean Astin's half-brother. Yes, he's on Magicians. It's hard for me to not see him as an evil trickster god.
That's what I was going to say. He is so typecast from Magicians.
Oh, man.
Because he went too villain.
Oh, he's so villain. Like, it's so villain, it's hard to recover, man.
Literally every scene he's in the show, I'm like, he's about to rape his daughters.
Absolutely going to eat one of these people. Just absolutely going to be...
Get out of the room!
Yeah.
But no, great actor. But it was just like, seeing him in a cardigan and like, pastel colors, I was like... Ooh, he's a bad guy. Don't trust
His
that.
parents are John Aston and Patty Duke.
Oh,
like,
wow.
that's just crazy parentage to me.
Yeah.
And his stepbrother Sam.
So I don't want to say too much because then the second half there's some big developments in relationships.
We'll talk next week on the back half of this one.
But I started out on this and fell in love with it in like episode 2, and by the time we got to the finale, I was even more in love with it. And also, I'm like, I'm not sure if I loved or really didn't like the ending, but it's definitely memorable, and I hope they get a season 2.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm digging it so far.
All right, let's change gears a little bit and go out to the space and talk about... Yeah?
Real quick, sorry, before we leave that show, something else that I realized is we're about to talk about all these other networks that have all these great shows. Netflix is no longer playing the game where they want to like bring you in with Orange is the New Black or, the Kevin Spacey show or whatever. Like, Netflix literally has to have shows this good in order to just compete with everybody else who's trying to drown them.
That's the thing, that their quality level is so good. It's like they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Like every show they drop has been really great lately. So
my brain just seized up at what the Kevin Spacey show would be.
Oh, Jesus.
But then I realized you meant House of Cards. But I was like, he has a what?
But no, it is interesting because Netflix, and I guess Hulu to some extent, but Netflix, they're just maintaining. Like, everybody else is trying to get people in, and Netflix's whole thing is we just need to stay good so people don't leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, they're also one of the better price deals as far as all this stuff goes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so...
But sorry, just to get the network comparison in first.
Right. All right. So now, let us depart from Earth and teenage bounty hunting in Georgia and head out into space for Star Trek Lower Decks, the second ever Star Trek animated series.
Yes, Dark Side of the Federation yet again.
So I think I'm curious where you guys landed on this, because I watched the first one and I was very conflicted. I was like, I liked this and I also hated it, and I kind of want more, but I also wish they never made it. And it is a weird bit of...
So I think I said off mic before last week when we were discussing about like that we wanted to put this off a week and watch a second episode, that I was really wondering if I like Star Trek in theory and not in practice, because all of my Trek friends love this or seem to be really happy with it. And as I understand it, the showrunner for it is personally like the best Trek nerd in Hollywood you could get to run this thing,
right? In
terms of respect for it. And I am not by any stretch the biggest Trek fan, so I feel weird, kind of like I wasn't that happy with Discovery. Like, I stopped watching Discovery's first season. I don't want to see evil Trek. Like, I don't want to see dark. Like, I don't want to see a utopia of petty, shitty people.
Man, you gotta watch season 2 of Discovery,
and that's what I understand. I need to go back and watch it. But so for me to. I had a hard time watching the first episode of Lower Decks, believing that people who could be petty and shitty and weird, like I didn't want to see all the tech fail and everybody be grouchy about their jobs and stuff, because I don't believe that attitude can exist in a microcosm and the utopia of the Federation function. Like, these small things trickle up to me.
Can I tell you what I think the interesting thing... We're going to talk about Ted Lasso in a bit, that is a Bill Lawrence joint. And I actually think the first episode of Lower Decks compares to the first episode of Bill Lawrence's Scrubs, where you think people are one thing, but they're not. We're viewing it all through the point of view of a JD, a sort of nebbishy...
Super earnest, but maybe really annoying lead guy. And in this case, that's Ensign Boimler, voiced by Jack Quaid. Mm-hmm.
And he's got his, will they, won't they girl, Tawny Newsome playing Ensign Mariner. And it's very much a JD and Elliot thing, and the captain is one way. Like, it seems like one thing is going on. It seems like maybe Mariner's the screw up, and he's the good guy, and she's just going to be like, he's going to have to bring her around to caring about Starfleet. And then by the end of the first episode, you're like, oh no, she just actually knows how things work, and she wants to help regardless of what the systems are, and she's going to bring him around on that. And the big reveal of Scrubs episode 1, spoilers for a show that's like 20 years old, is that Cox is the good guy even though he's yelling all the time, and Kelso is the jerk even though he seems like the nice boss. Mm-hmm. And in this one, it's that Mariner is the daughter of the captain, and she's kind of a screw up in that her parents are both kind of wanting her not to do this.
Yeah, by the end of the first episode, I was not entirely sold that it wasn't going to be, like, I don't know, a Star Trek that was still taking the piss out of Star Trek.
Yeah, I get that.
And I didn't really want that. Like, even the Orville doesn't do that. The Orville had if anything, I like the Orville more than season 1 of Discovery because it so had its heart on its sleeve about believing in this shit.
Yeah.
And like, Tua, like, staring people in the face. And I didn't want the whole show to be about shitting on the Ernest character.
So, Kyle, I'm curious. What was your take after the first episode? Where were you on this?
I watched them back to back. You guys, I think, might have split it out. But
I had a week between them,
in sequence. So the twist and kind of the reveal of the show dynamics, I got to get much quicker. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was pretty sold on it, especially after the second episode. But it definitely feels like they don't have the confidence to do a comedy Star Trek show in live action.
Yeah,
like, even though it obviously works on the Orville, which I think is really good, this felt kind of like an animated Orville, but actually a little better, because I do think I'm a bit more invested in these characters than some of the characters on the Orville, which just seem like kind of subs for Star Trek characters we're familiar with.
Now, I think that's an interesting comparison, because right now, based on 2 episodes of Lower Decks, I think I kind of agree with you. If I were to compare 2 episodes of Lower Decks with the first 2 episodes of Orville, I'd be like, yeah, Lower Decks starts stronger. But I know where Orville goes, and Orville Season 2 was really good. And so I don't know if Lower Decks has that kind of, once it gets its runway and it gets going. But I could see it, because it is stronger at the start. Like, the characters in this are all strong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Another comparison I would make is the IT Crowd, which I love, which is the British show about the people who work in the basement of this huge industry.
Everybody drink. Kyle mentioned British shows.
Yep. But kind of the joke of the show is that they are the lowest people on the totem pole, yet every episode they are directly interacting with the CEO of the company, and that's what this feels like. Is the whole time they're like, "No, we're down in the lower decks. We're the crew that is in the back of the ship. Wait, real quick, I have to go to the bridge and talk to the captain about something."
I think that was very smart to make Mariner the captain's daughter.
Yeah,
it gives him a reason. Someone described this. Was it you, Les? It might have been you. Someone described this as "Oops, all Wesleys."
Yes,
and that's amazing to me. That because I think. You could have that could be either a withering criticism or a loving tribute, and right now I lean toward loving tribute. I like that these guys are the scrappy underdogs.
At the end of the first episode, I meant it as withering criticism, and at the end of the second episode, it like Wesley did, it turned into a charming compliment. Because, and I'll tell you what specifically in the second episode, they had to do the bit 3 times before it finally soothed my or laid my fears, but I can't remember the character's name, the one that's got the implant. That whole story with the he keeps guy. Is it Rutherford?
Mm-hmm. It's Rutherford.
Eugene Cordero. So the show's got a great voice cast. Eugene Cordero is great. So he keeps changing. When they started the episode and his maybe new girlfriend asks him to, like, don't break our date tonight. And he immediately jumps to, like, I guess I'll change my whole career. And I was like, damn it, sitcom. Like, I don't want to watch that's too big a character misunderstanding. Like, come on. It starts to feel like Arrowverse. We're like, just tell him the thing. Just fucking tell him. But
it was
then as
such
the
a fun way to
episode
get him
wore
to
on,
tour all the departments.
exactly, it becomes this way for him to tour every department of the ship, which is great to do in the second episode. Yep. And also, they keep playing this joke where he's so scared to ask for the transfer because the team bond on every department is so strong, and they play it up, and then it's always like, "Great for you. It's great to find out who you really want to be. We support you. Love you." And
that's Star Trek. That's what makes it Star Trek.
And that's exactly. by the third time they did it, I was like, thank you for indulging me and just driving the bit home that you do know what Star Trek is, or what I want Star Trek to be. Because the original Star Trek cartoon, while it looked like, let's charitably call it a motion comic, it was cardboard cutouts of the Star Trek characters drawn weird and moved around, but it had the full voice cast and they were just unproduced original series scripts.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. I don't want Family Guy on a ship. And weirdly, I was going to be super fucking mad if I got Family Guy on a Star Trek ship out of the actual Star Trek franchise.
Yeah.
And the Family Guy dude gave me earnest Star Trek.
Yeah,
that's what it looks like if you just look at the posters.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's a close, like, you could almost look sideways and this and be like, yeah, this basically is like Rick and Morty or Family Guy on Star Trek, because it has some of that humor, some of that a little bit edgier than Star Trek. There's a little more sex involved in some of it. Like they're just on this side of like it being, because there's no sex in Star Trek. Nobody has sex in Star Trek until we get to Discovery.
But you know somebody's going to have to find the bathroom on this ship.
This is much less chaste than and less boring than Next Generation, and I mean that not that the show was boring in that, but the world was kind of utopian boring a lot of the time.
Well, and the whole premise of it that they're literally the second contact team.
Yeah, but I also love I have yet to get tired of it. I think it is that JD and Elliot dynamic of Mariner. Is always the smarter one. I love when Boimler's like, okay, well, let me greet the Klingon. And Mariner just just start punching him and goes at him, and he's like, "No, I know how to deal with Klingons."
Yeah. No, and voice cast wise, like Space Force was not the spectacular show that we wanted. It's just for myriad problem issues.
Yes,
but it had a great cast. Tawny Newsome killed it on that show as the helicopter pilot. She'd had more to do.
Yep.
And I'm thrilled to have her in the lead of this voice cast. She's great as Mariner.
So I real quick want to mention Mike McMahon is the showrunner of this, and he is a guy who was a story editor and writer on Rick and Morty, a writer on Solar Opposites, and I did not realize this. He wrote the Short Treks episode, the one of the maybe the best one that had Harry Mudd, which makes so much sense.
Speaking of Teenage Bounty Hunters earlier having Dwayne Wayne, we should note that Captain Carol Freeman on Lower Decks is played by Dawn Lewis, who was Jaleesa Vincent on A Different World, the main lead on that.
Anyway, I don't know. I'm curious where Kyle, it sounds like you were pretty on board this because you watched it back to back.
Yeah, I think this is going to be stick around in the rotation.
And Les, where'd you land on this at this point?
After episode 1, I was not sold. After episode 2, I am definitely going to watch 3 and maybe 4. And if they keep it up, this might actually end up in my rotation.
That's kind of where I am too.
I really enjoyed episode 2 a lot more than I thought I would.
Yeah, same.
Oh man, I was really not ready for him to kill a shitload of the Smorgasbord.
Yeah, I honestly think they should have given us 3 episodes.
Yes. I do love seeing somebody just stare lovingly at a Jeffries tube. Like, that's just fucking hysterical. I don't know. There's a lot about this that I'm digging now. I'm glad we gave it to.
So that takes me over to the next show we're doing, which is Ted Lasso on Apple Plus.
Yeah.
And they did give us 3 episodes, which I think was smart because I feel like it gives you a much better idea what the show is about. This is based on an NBC Sports thing, is that right?
Yes, from 2013.
Oh.
I sent you all the link on it as well. They compiled it into like you can watch some of the longer things. And so the whole press conference with the halves, they play in halves. Yeah, there's a tie.
Yeah.
That whole bit it's not done like that. And I would encourage everybody to go look up on YouTube the 2013 Ted Lasso bit. And you can see what Bill Lawrence brought to what they changed to make this into a series that could go forward.
Yeah,
and not just be a fish out of water bit.
This got my attention for 2 reasons. One is Jason Sudeikis, who I love. Mm-hmm. And the other is Bill Lawrence, who did Scrubs and Cougar Town and a variety of other shows, and who always brings both humor and sort of a warmth and a humanity to his shows. And I feel like as I was watching Ted Lasso, it was like a warm hug. It's like it's a very sweet, very earnest show. I wish it was laugh out loud funnier, but it does have its laughs. And the fact of the matter is the characters are so likable that I'm just kind of in it.
So I didn't expect to give...
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, there's like a lot of jokes I do find funny, and a lot of the humor it's situational. There are a couple of like cliche things they do where he's calling the biscuits cookies, and it's not gas, it's petrol. But besides that stuff, the characters are so sincere, and the message is so heartwarming. Like you see how everybody is like. Everybody's kind of a good guy, but their situations all draw them at odds with each other.
I don't know if they're all a good guy. Nathan's kind of a shit. Isn't he?
Nathan?
Isn't Nathan the old? No, not Nathan. Who's the?
I was like, quit picking on Nathan.
No, Nathan's awesome. Jamie's a shit.
Oh yeah, but you see the episode. There's an episode where Ted tries the positive reinforcement with him.
Yeah.
And you think he's going to come around. He ends up not coming around. So yeah, he's still a little shit. But it is that moment where you're like, oh, even this guy, he's got an edge. If they were just picking at it, he could also be a good character. But yeah, everybody's kind of got their own situation that they just can't get out of the way of. And that's where all the drama comes in.
Can I tell you guys, I think Jason Sudeikis is highly underrated. Because I've seen this guy do so much stuff. Like, he, in the movie that I really like, We're the Millers, he plays kind of a scummy drug dealer guy and plays it well.
Yeah.
He's played guys that are like a little scuzzy. He's played guys that are jerks. But Ted Lasso is this sincere, likable, and the funny thing is they could easily have played him as a bumpkin. Like, he doesn't know what he's doing in some ways, and he's kind of a goof. He's got this goofy mustache. He dances with his team in these ways that wind up on YouTube. He's easily mocked, and yet within days of being in England, he's found the best biscuits on the entire island. He knows how to talk to his team. And whether he knows the basics of soccer or not, he clearly is a really good coach. Like, I think he did a good job of walking that line of, oh no, this guy's not an idiot. He's not simple. He's basic. He's salt of the earth.
So the 2013 version is a lot more acerbic Sudeikis.
Okay.
Just say that 5 times fast. Where he's at the press conference, like it's going a lot faster at the press conference where he's, like, fine, halves, whatever. And moving forward, I think at one point somebody's like, no, he's like, he calls somebody British and like, no, he's from Wales. It's like, is that a different country? And somebody's like, sort of.
They do that joke here too, yeah.
But it's all played a little more like dismissive and I don't give a shit, like whatever. And they play him a lot sweeter, but I think it's between Bill Lawrence and Sudeikis, they don't go into schmaltz cheese with him. Like you say, he doesn't turn into a bumpkin. They keep it just this side of it. Because I think the moment in the first episode, I've only watched the first one, the moment in the first episode where it's the player you can tell is going to be a problem. He's like, I didn't think I'd ever finish out my career being coached by Ronald fucking McDonald. But Sudeikis looks over at his coach he's brought with him and is like, yeah, you think he's pissed now, wait till we win him over, he's gonna hate it.
And like, I love the two coaches. Such a
and I like that major league it's got this major league vibe. It feels a little bit like the Wild Thing Cleveland Indians. You got the fake sabotage of the team and they're gonna win regardless. I expected to not give any shits about this show. I can't express enough how not on my radar this was, other than the casting of Sudeikis. But though I loved We're the Millers, he can play dick so well. We talked about Mackenzie Aston going to villain on Magicians. I have seen Jason Sudeikis be such a dick on stuff that's so funny to me, but in a way that makes me wonder if he's like really a terrible human in real life, where like I wonder if something's wrong with him. I am stunned. He's so sweet. It's like watching Steve Carell be able to go from psychopathic monster to utterly earnest sweet dude.
Oh,
and
good comparison.
That's the comparison I want to say. Like, that's why I think Sudeikis is underrated. Carell has managed to transition to doing some dramatic stuff, and I actually think Sudeikis is 100% capable of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And this show
Have you
really,
seen
I think,
Colossal
showed off.
with Anne Hathaway.
Oh yeah, he's great.
Yes.
Colossal, and he's a
That is
monster in
choice. Yeah,
So,
literally.
this is like the sweetest version of Brockmire possible.
that. Oh, that's good. So I want to jump back to the Major League comparison you made, because I love Major League, and I got the same thing. And I think that one of the things in Major League is that the villain in that, the woman, is so horrible and yet likably horrible. Like, you never root for her, but she's always entertaining. And Hannah Waddington, who, by the way, is also on Sex Education as one of the lesbian moms.
And something
right.
else. Do you recognize her from Game of Thrones?
No, what's she on Game of Thrones?
She's the nun
Oh my
who
god,
rings
that's
the
amazing.
bell, and then Cersei
So-
douses with the wine
Yeah.
and sicks the mountain on her.
So she is great here because, first of all, she's smoking hot in this role.
Yeah.
She is definitely in control of the room at all times. I love the way she browbeats her assistant. I love the way she just trying to get around Lasso's friendliness and familiarity, and just finds herself kind of slightly won over by him. And I think they're going to go away where she's definitely pulling something here, but I feel like they're not going to turn her into the straight out villain. I think we're going to see her humanized in the same way Kelso was on Scrubs.
Well, I like the fact that I could back her motivation. So I don't personally give any shits about a football franchise. So the fact that she's in the first episode, I think she straight up tells Higgins, I have absolutely hired Ted Lasso, not as some brilliant publicity move, but because the only thing my ex-husband loves in the world is this franchise, and I am going to make him watch it burn. and that's when it set it up as like a modernized Major League, because
Yeah.
the Major League is very much set up as these locker room boys will be boys, and if this mean woman would just get out of their way, they could win.
Yeah.
And that doesn't age well.
No.
This is very much your soccer franchise is full of dickwads and doesn't win anyway, and I am going to destroy it to watch my ex-husband squirm. And I you know what? That's a personal vendetta story that I can understand.
So I also think the story that they did in, I think it's episode 3, that ties into Jamie and Roy, and whether or not the older guy is in the charge of the locker room, or the star's in charge of the locker room, and his girlfriend, played by Juno Temple, who I think is really, really good. The bond that Ted Lasso forms with the girlfriend is really believable and likable. And the way he sort of brings Roy around to hey man, you got to give a shit about this kind of stuff. I loved that story. I thought that was so well done.
And how all that ties in with the Nathan character who we were talking about a second ago.
Yep.
Who, it's funny because you're introduced and he's like, I'm the least important person here, and he treats him like the most important person.
Yep.
And, I don't know. It's how you wish your boss treated you.
Also, Trent, the guy who's plays the snobby reporter. Episode 3 has a big turn with him that I absolutely adored.
I love that opening question that he gives in the first episode.
Yeah.
And it's a great moment with Jason Sudeikis of is there a question in there, Trent?
I think Bill Lawrence does a great job of what he's done in Cougar Town, what he's done in Scrubs. He does everything. He takes characters who could be one-dimensional villains and gives them depth and makes you like them. And he takes characters who could be sort of naive, almost unlikable, goody-goods, and gives them a shading that you see the flaws in them too. His characters are really, really well rounded, and you can see his fingerprints all over this show.
I gotta say, walking that line between showing me human foibles but not showing me shitty people is the same balancing act I'm asking Lower Deck to do.
Yeah, and they're both so far.
Did you guys know that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know Coach Beard, played by Brendan Hunt, is one of the creators?
I was wondering
okay.
why I know him or what he's done, because he's perfect in it.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Also, I love that character too. It's the reason you buy that an American coach could go over there and not just go crazy is because his assistant coach is so supportive, and then he also supports the assistant coach. They are this team, and you're like, oh no, if you had this team, they could probably go into a weird situation like that.
Can't fall asleep, coach. Man, don't be a sleep cop.
You know what's funny? I am not a sports guy. And it is rare for me to care about coaches and sports teams, that kind of thing. You got to get me with something like Major League or Bull Durham, or the comparison I would make is like Friday Night Lights. This is a less dramatic, but it has that same thing where I'm like, it's fundamentally about the coaches are fundamentally decent people, and I wish I believed that was the way it really was in life. Mm-hmm. But I think they do a good job of like making these guys likable and like, yeah, if this is what everybody was like that were coaches, I think I have a lot more respect for sports.
I am absolutely going to watch more Ted Lasso, and I can't believe I'm saying that. That was not on
Zach
my radar.
Braff is going to direct an episode.
Oh, nice.
Or maybe he directed one of the ones we already saw. It doesn't say which one on here. Just says he's directing one.
All right, let's
find it before the end of the episode.
Let's take a little diversion over into Lovecraft Country. We should warn people, we're probably going to spoil. I mean, we don't always give spoiler warnings, but I do want to say, if you've not seen this, get HBO Go and watch it. It's so good.
Yeah, and it's just on regular old HBO. It's not maxed out.
That's right. It's on. Well, yeah. So it's, if you don't have HBO Max, as like 70% of the country doesn't because of the Roku and Amazon Fire Stick fight.
All my friends who I ask about this go, "Nah, I got Roku." I was like, "Damn."
Well, this one's on. You can watch this on your Roku. It's on the regular HBO.
Yeah, it's just on HBO. Mm-hmm. So this is a novel that I have not read, but I've been curious about. It takes place in the 1950s, and it's got some. Here's what I knew going in. I knew that it was Jordan Peele co-producing, or at least he'd been one of the guys who championed it. I knew that it was about African-American characters in the 1950s, and that had something to do with Lovecraft. And I know that Lovecraft was super racist. That's all I knew going in, and I am so happy to be able to have gone into it kind of blind and not knowing what I was going to get, because I feel like it just amps up the tension, and you get this like really great like character building stuff and racial, not segregation, but it's like terror, basically racial terror going on. Mm-hmm. And then
terror.
There are monsters.
Well, so for the first 50 minutes of an hour-long episode, it seems like it is really just a show incredibly thoroughly establishing how bad all times prior to this moment, and still now, were for black people in America, particularly in the South. And it's kind of got, I don't think they actually call it the Green Book, but it's clearly they're compiling the Green Book. And is it Courtney B. Vance?
Yes.
Mr. Angela Bassett. Is this uncle? I love the setup into this world. We've got our main character who comes home from the war, and is not enjoying being back home, and he's come back to find his missing drunk father. And I like the believability of, like, not everybody on this road trip has to believe Artem exists or that any of the Lovecraft shit's real. All they have to do is believe that your drunk father thinks it's real, and his idiot ass has vanished into New England.
Yeah.
And so, like, it worked for me that you didn't have to convince everyone in the car what you were doing. But I also like, I just watched Color Out of Space, where they have Lovecraft as a fictional character, which is frequently done, and they take the piss out of Lovecraft being a humongous racist by having him be Ward Lovecraft in Color Out of Space as a black guy. And in this, Lovecraft is a writer who has written a bunch of this shit, and it is the very real debate of, like, when I was a kid, the like, no, I think it was real, and this guy was getting signals from it. No, he was just a pulp writer, but whatever. I like that it's kind of real in the mythology, and that they bring up that poem, which you can go look up on Wikipedia, which is a lot.
I think one of the things I liked from the outset of this, they did was kind of a meta nod. They open up with our lead character Atticus, who I fell instantly in love with. Mm-hmm. And he's on a bus, at the back of a bus, leaving Kentucky on his way back to Chicago. And the bus breaks down, and he and this older black woman basically wind up walking. This truck shows up for all the white people, and they wind up having to walk. And as they're walking, he's talking about the book that he was reading. He was reading John Carter of Mars.
Yeah.
And the woman's asking, there's some great dialogue there where she's like, well, what's it about? And he's like, well, he's a soldier, and he goes to this magic cave, and he winds up on Mars, and he becomes a warlord. And she's like, you said he was a Confederate soldier? And he's like, X. And she's like, he fought for slavery. You don't get to put X in front of that. And and then he gives her his, well, I think of stories like people. They're flawed, but you try to enjoy what you can out of them. And I think that is such a great sort of meta way of saying, hey guys, we know Lovecraft was super racist, but we're going to try and do something here.
Like the idea of existential cosmic horror that we're too small to face or comprehend or anything. He touched on something great there, and that kind of horror is worth continuing. Yeah.
And that it's interesting, you can plug it into the existential horror of being black in America in the 1950s, and it's like, how did this racist accidentally tap into this perfect metaphor?
Yes. Yeah. Well, and they use a James Baldwin, they actually use Baldwin's narration over a whole segment, and if you haven't gone and watched I Am Not Your Negro or read any of Baldwin's writings, it's great, and hard to, it's just brutal fucking truth. Yeah. But Baldwin's talked before about, what's the quote? That it's frankly staggering that black people in America don't have a permanent paranoid psychosis from living like this generationally. That multiple generations of your family having to live in just, well, we see it in this episode where they are in a sundowner, not just town but county. Oof. And they can't leave south of the county because you can't get there in time before sundown, so you got to go the other direction. And of course we find out, spoilers, that's a fucking setup, and the next county's also sundowner. And I was thinking that as they were driving, of like, you don't know that the next county's good. There is nowhere far enough to run. There is no safe place in America. And
that's what the whole the point the book is. They're like, they're trying to find the safe harbors, so you can actually move about the country as a black person, which you cannot at this point.
I love that on the map there's trolls that.
Well, it's like going out to sea. It's like going out to sea in the 1700s. It's like, here there be dragons and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. But it's like just going across rural America. And he's made that real by having the daughter of one of the characters who draws these maps of monsters and things everywhere.
But her monsters are presciently dead on. Like the two sundowner counties are trolls that pick their teeth with motorists. And
so I did a little cheating, guys, before we did this episode. And I listened to the official podcast from HBO, Lovecraft Radio. Which is by Ashley Ford and Lovecraft writer Shannon Houston, a pair of women of color, and they talked about this episode, and they talked a lot about the metaphor and how it applies to Black Lives Matter in modern day, and I highly recommend it because it definitely filled in some of the gaps of what I had not necessarily noticed, but other than subconsciously. One of the things they talked about is how the opening of this show is all about black joy in black spaces. Like, before we get to the absolute horror that is 1950s America, we see Chicago and the neighborhood, the black neighborhood, and the block party and music, and turning on the fire hydrant for everybody, and that he has this uncle who he can relate to with his love of science fiction, all that kind of stuff, and this uncle making love to his wife. Like, this is not a constant struggle. There is a safe harbor for them here. It's just that they're kind of trapped in that harbor.
Yeah. I did think it was really interesting. As I'm watching that, I'm just thinking of, like, every HGTV show now, like every, middle-class suburban family wants to, like, build this huge outdoor cooking area, like big barbecue area. And it's like, man, they were ahead of the curve on this.
So I think we should, we're going to touch on this show more and more. I don't know. We may well cover this week to week. And so I don't want to get too far into mysteries of anything yet because we don't know. Right. But I love that they, in the first episode, pay off. There is no half a season of Castle Rock before we know if there's a monster or something. This shit goes to body horror like... Overlord was the thing that it reminded me of. The recent movie with Nazi experiments. And shit.
Yeah.
Like the monsters that come, the Ogshoggoths, or whatever the shit the word is, that come out of the woods with eyeballs and transforming people as they buy. Like, it's just great and goes bug shit crazy out. I mean, as soon as the sun goes down, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So that the show really, if it had just been this well done, a Green Book type story about these people, I was impressed already. That it then pulled the trigger on the monsters, I'm in love.
Well, and
same here.
talking a lot about the finale because the finale was just so fantastic. But I thought one of the most effective scenes was when they were in the diner.
Yeah,
and they make the comment about the walls being painted.
I want to jump back a little further. I want to talk first about this cast that they established so well early on. So, Jonathan Majors as Atticus Freeman, as an ex-soldier who's coming home, he's a sci-fi nerd in an action hero body. Like, he loves John Carter of Mars, he loves Lovecraft, and he's a guy who likes all this nerdy stuff, but he's a soldier, and so he's also very capable.
Well, and they picked an actor that's got a build. I mean, he's got that, like, well, the 40s military did, or 50s military did this to you. And they play that when he comes back to town where everybody's like, that's the nerd?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, well, he's been in the military for the last few.
They've got Journey Smollett playing Letty Lewis, who is a photographer, a singer, this, like, clearly just like a ball of energy and intelligence. And also we find out later an athletic track runner, which she is just like such a strong, empowered character. And I love her.
She's nearly going to get them killed a couple times.
I love her from the jump. I love her from the jump.
One thing, there is a moment where I was like, I know why she's a photographer. It's so she'd have those photo bulbs handy in the third act.
Courtney B. Vance is great in everything he's ever in, and he's fantastic here. Anjanou Ellis playing Hippolyta, which is not how I would have pronounced it if I had just read it in a book. Really like her, and I think she's going to have a little more. I thought they were leaving her behind, but it seems like we're going to see her story as well.
Cool.
And then we get them, and they quickly put them into a car together, and they've given me enough that I like all these characters at that point. And then when they put them on the road, and we start to see her family difficulties that are very intense and real, and then we get to that scene in the diner where they're like they find a diner and they're trying to see if it fits in the Green Book. And the tension in that moment was so good.
Man, when they pulled up, when they pulled into that town, it was already like, I was already thinking, how crazy, how crazy spine of fucking steel does Courtney B. Vance have?
Right.
That he's come out. And I mean, and he talks earlier about having 2 broke kneecaps because of doing this shit. Yeah. But they pull up and the building next to that diner is burned. Mm-hmm. And then they go sit, and I was like, at first I thought, oh, y'all pulled up to a diner you heard was good, and it's a burned out shell. And then they still go into the diner next door that's not the right name, and I'm like, get back in your car.
They've already passed the fireman who gave him a glare.
Oh, man.
And then the customer gives him a glare and walks out. The soda jerk seems terrified.
Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I'm sure that guy's sitting there thinking, like, well, shit, my diner's about to get burnt.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And what he does, he sells them out because of that.
Yep.
And the Letty coming screaming out of the back, yelling, "Get the fuck up! We got to get the fuck out of here right now!" And suddenly it's a chase, and a great chase. There are 2 great chases in this episode, I thought.
Oh yeah, one where they have to go really fast, and one where they have to go really slow.
Yeah, this one. I love the silver car, the sort of alien silver car that comes out of nowhere and crashes the other car without touching it.
That was pretty.
Yes,
I saw that. Right. Like they never touched.
No. It does not touch it. There's like a bubble around that car.
And then
she steps out. That rolls.
Woman who I don't know who she is yet, and I kind of don't want to look too far into it. But she has this sort of ethereal quality and is really fascinating already. Just from like the second. I'm like, I can't wait to find out more about this character.
I'll bet money she has whatever dog whistle got blown at the end of the episode.
Oh, it's entirely possible, yeah. And then we get the big final piece where they find themselves they're trying to find this lost town that Montrose, his dad is, Artem, whose dad is supposedly disappeared to. They can't find it, and a cop pulls up on him. And the tension of that moment, that whole thing of like, he is just a complete racist prick, completely dangerous. And unfortunately, this is not just a thing from the 1950s. Like, it feels very real and very timely. And the fact that he just basically toys with them. He's like, you beg me to let you go and let you make a U-turn and drive slow. Make sure you don't break the speed limit. Get across that county line or else you're going to die.
And he looks bemused by Atticus figuring out the trick on the U-turn, which I wouldn't have thought of, but is a way that you get killed.
Yeah. it's such a
It would be illegal to make that turn.
The tension of it all. It's like, man, this should not be happening. This is so wrong. It's as other as to a bunch of white guys. This is other a thing as Lovecraft. It's like, man, imagining yourself in that situation is just frankly terrifying.
Well, I mean, honestly, the multi-eyed at the point that they turn up in the episode, the multi-eyed tentacle monsters are almost a satisfying direct monster that you can actually fucking shoot at.
Yeah, it's funny
because for these characters, everyone else is a monster that they are powerless to do anything but just try to be nice to and apologize through your teeth.
Well, in the podcast, in the official podcast, the women said, they're like, yeah, honestly, when that cop turns into a Shoggoth, it feels like they're safer.
Yes. Yeah, I love they're like yelling at the other deputy, shoot him, you have to shoot him, I'll shoot him, just give me the gun.
Yeah. That was... First of all, their Shoggoths are killer. They're so good looking. They're so perfect and scary and fast. And they dig into the ground and they've got this bestial appearance. It was perfect effect.
Oh man,
so
when
good.
Dug into the ground, Jesus.
Yeah. And then they're running away from it and trying to get it looks like they're all going to die at the hands of these cops. And then things get better and worse at the same time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then we're in a horror scenario. And what I loved about this, they didn't do the thing where the black and the white people have to learn to work together and, oh, the racist sheriff isn't so bad, at least he's not a Shoggoth. No, he's still a fucking piece of shit, and we're glad he's dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to shoot him before he turned. Like, oh, you're turning?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
I mean, granted, when he walked into the building and like most of your shoulders gone, dude.
Yeah.
How are you walking around? Like, there's no way you're okay walking around with that, dude. Something's happening.
How are you holding, a gun right now?
Mm-hmm.
There's no way you could fire it even if you wanted to.
I loved everything about that, and I was right there in it. I was like, I never for a second were my eyes off the screen. I was so in it. And then the payoff to the Shoggoth, where they wind up at this big elaborate mansion where this weird otherworldly white dude is like, oh, we've been expecting you. I'm like, what the fuck? I want episode 2 right now.
Right now. Yeah. Yes. I love this. So I saw something online that like everything with black leads, that this show is getting middling ratings on IMDb.
Oh, that
because
makes me so angry.
If you kind of like this show, or if you kind of like a show, you don't go out and 5-star rated on every single site you can get on. But if you're a racist fuckbag and you really want to shit on a show like this, you go out and 1-star things. It's how Wonder Woman gets a 0-star rating a week before it comes out. And shit like that. So if you liked Lovecraft Country at all, and you at all ever log into things and rank shit or rate things or 5-star things or whatever, go do it on whatever site you do it on. Go upvote it on whatever site you do it on, because the people who haven't even watched it and just know that they don't like it definitely are doing that.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
And so like, if you want to see this survive, and I do, and it is exceptional, I don't want it shot down just because of politics of rating.
That said, if I have a serious gripe, can I go ahead and shoot it down now?
Yeah.
Yes.
A non-racial gripe. The scariest part of this, I'm not gonna, that's hyperbolic. All right. One of the scariest moments was when I saw J.J. Abrams' name in the executive producer credits, because he is the king of starting stuff. Like, anything he starts always seems like this is going to be the best thing ever, but then his curse is also he's not the best at ending things.
Here's the thing. I'm gonna push back into this, Kyle. First of all, Leftovers has a perfect ending.
Wait, isn't there like a dick scanner and...
It's amazing! I love Leftovers.
Yeah, I didn't make it that far, but I will say this is based on a book that does come to an end.
Okay.
And I like Jordan Peele.
I think Lost is a perfectly good ending. I know there's some plot elements, but I think Lost emotionally is very satisfying. And I will even defend Rise of Skywalker, not that it's a great movie, but that he got sandbagged by the second movie. Like, that was a, like, come in and land this movie, even though the second movie has nothing to do with anything you did. Like, either that movie should have been all Last Jedi or no Last Jedi. They should not have tried to do it in the middle.
Well, and
but
My comment's a little bit
J.J.
more of a commentary on like when he gave his TED Talk, he even kind of talks about his idea of the mystery box.
Yeah, he loves mystery box.
It's always way better when you don't open it.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel his shows are. Like, they're always really awesome until you have to open it. And then,
That
like
said,
you said, they're not always bad. Yeah.
J.J. Abrams is like, I think he's a producer in name only. Like, he's at HBO because of other stuff. Like, he is not involved in this. He's not named anywhere in the IMDb. Like, this is definitely not his show. It's not Jordan Peele's either. Jordan Peele shepherded this, but he's not day-to-day involved.
Interesting.
I don't want to go read the novel because I want to watch this unfold, and but the fact that it is based on an existing property that is not an endless ongoing comic or something like that gives me hope that this is going to have a landing to at least attempt to stick.
Yeah, I gotta tell you guys, this for me, I've been excited for this since I heard about it, even though I'd read the novel. Something about it, Jordan Peele, Lovecraft Country. I was like, this sounds good. Having watched it, even with high expectations, this for me is like, oh, this is how I feel when like Westworld or Game of Thrones or one of those is on. Like, this is that show that's going to be the first thing I watch every week whenever it drops. And
I'll be waiting for this one to drop.
I don't know if that'll maintain, but as a pilot, this may be one of the best pilots. This may be the best pilot we've watched all year.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised that one of our friends isn't making a podcast about it.
I can't imagine. Are we sure he's not making a podcast about it?
We don't know that for a fact yet.
Lovecraft. So this was a good week for TV, guys. I mean, we liked pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We want to thank our patrons. Thank you to Tyler Thorson for giving us Dark Side of the Ring. Thank you to Mandy. Thank you everybody who is a patron.
Yeah.
Thank you listeners.
Thank you,
Kyle.
brother.
Thank you, Les. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, brothers and sisters.
and until next week.
TV dudes out.
Brother.
The TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/tvdudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.